नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस् नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस् नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्. Today I'm going to talk about Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri. Today is International Bhikkhuni Day, and it is very important that we remember the life and work of Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri. I will take you through a journey of Bhikkhunis from the time of Buddhas up to the present time, and then come back to a very important role that Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri has played uh, in this journey. So, the first Bhikkhuni during the Buddha time was Mahapajapati Gotami, who was Buddha's uh, aunt, and she also nursed him and and took care of him after Buddha's own mother Mahamayaji passed 7 days after his birth. So Mahapajapati Gotami was the first woman to get to get to become the bhikkhuni. She traveled with 500 Sakyan women to Buddha. She went repeatedly to Buddha uh, to seek ordination, and she was given ordination along with 500 Sakyan women um, during Buddha's time. So she was the first bhikkhuni at during Buddha's time. Thereafter, and then the bhikkhuni tradition continued after Mahapajapati Gotami, and there were many, many Arhat bhikkhunis, including Rahul Mata, uh, Yashodhara Mahatheri, and many others during Buddha's time. So this tradition continued up until um, Ashoka's time, and beyond that in India. Uh, but during Ashoka's time, a very important event happened that Bhikkhuni Sangamitra traveled from India to Sri Lanka with the cutting of Bodhi tree from Bodh Gaya to Sri Lanka. And Bodhi tree was planted in Sri Lanka by Bhikkhuni Sangamitra, and she also was pioneer in starting the Bhikkhuni tradition in Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC. Thereafter, the Bhikkhuni tradition continued in Sri Lanka for a very, very long time, up until 1017 AD. But in between, Sri Lanka passed on the Bhikkhuni tradition to many other countries. So there was in 429 AD, Bhikkhuni Devasara. She took a cutting of a Bodhi tree from Sri Lanka, from Anuradhapuram in Sri Lanka, and traveled to China. In China, 300 bhikkhunis were ordained at Nanling Southern Forest Monastery in Nanjing. In addition to Bhikkhuni Devasara, who traveled to China, there was Bhikkhuni Chandramali, who led a second group of bhikkhunis to Tibet, uh, and they took a very hazardous journey, and then they were involved in translating the Tipitak in Sanskrit in Tibet. So from Sri Lanka, the Bhikkhuni tradition spread to China and Tibet. From China, then the Bhikkhuni tradition traveled to Taiwan, Korea, and Vietnam, where it continues till date. The Bhikkhuni tradition never stopped in China, Taiwan, Korea, and Vietnam, and it continues up till now. But the Theravada tradition in Sri Lanka, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Burma, the present Myanmar, uh, Laos, Cambodia, and that in the Theravada tradition died, at least in Sri Lanka, it is known that in 1017 AD, Cholian tribes who were extremist Hindus, they came down from India and conquered Anuradhapuram, and as a result, the Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni orders disappeared and became defunct. So since then, there were efforts to revive the Bhikkhu tradition, and the Bhikkhu tradition was revived in Sri Lanka, and it's doing very well in the present time. But the Bhikkhuni tradition was not revived, and the efforts were not taken to revive the Bhikkhuni tradition very soon. So Bhikkhuni tradition in the Theravada Bhikkhuni tradition in Sri Lanka and many other countries was lost for almost 1,000 years. Then in the many thousands of years, about 1,000 years later, people were making efforts to restart the Bhikkhuni tradition. And there was Anagarik Dhammapal who helped a bhikkhuni get ordinated, but the tradition did not continue. There were some odd bhikkhunis here and there uh, who were who did get ordination. There was also in all the Theravada countries, women continued to practice Dhamma by being Dassil Matas or following the 10 precepts, but they were not fully given the title of bhikkhuni, and um, they had a lower status compared to bhikkhus. So basically, the bhikkhuni tradition kind of had died out and did not come up for almost 1,000 years. So that is why the people who were involved in restarting the Theravada Bhikkhuni tradition have played a very important role, and amongst them, uh, Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri has played a key role. So, Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri was inspired by Aya Khema, who was her mentor. Aya Khema was a bhikkhuni from Germany. Uh, sh- uh, she was born in Germany, she was Jewish, she traveled all over the world, and she figured that it is the Theravada Bhikkhuni tradition that she wants to practice and live, and she did live uh, most of her life practicing Dhamma. She started out in Sri Lanka. Aya Khema was given a small island in Sri Lanka where she practiced with a few bhikkhunis, and she learned Dhamma so well that her teachers told her that she has to now teach the uh, jhana practices to other people. So she started teaching, and she taught not just in Sri Lanka, but also in USA and Germany, and maybe also in Australia. So because she traveled all over the world, and she lived almost everywhere in the world. Before becoming a bhikkhuni, and afterwards she taught meditation in many countries. So Aya Khema, towards the end of her life, people wanted to create a Aya Khema meditation center, and Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri was involved um, in Aya Khema Meditation Center as well up until the end of her life. But the most important thing about Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri is that uh, after the Bhikkhuni tradition in Sri Lanka had died out, she uh, she was one of the first bhikkhunis. There were a set of 10 bhikkhunis who got ordinated in Bodh Gaya in India in 1996, and she was one of the 10. Um, but the most important thing is that she was the person who took this tradition further. She later she and the 9 bhikkhunis who got ordinated in Bodh Gaya, lived in India for about 2 years because at that time there was resistance in Sri Lanka towards Bhikkhunis. And after 2 years, people forgot about them. So she did go back to Sri Lanka and started a Sakyaditi International Conference for Bhikkhunis, where Bhikkhunis from all over the world could come together and 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 support each other. So Aya Kusuma's dream was that bhikkhunis all over the world be educated, be practicing Dhamma, and teach Dhamma. She thought that when bhikkhunis do that all over the world, then the world will be a different place altogether. So so Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri was involved in starting a Sakyaditi conference. She continued that for many, many years, along with the Upasika Ranjini. Um, and this helped the Bhikkhuni tradition to start globally. And there were many other places where Bhikkhunis were starting to come up. Ayata Thaloka from US uh, has been ordained for more than 30 years now. She got her pabaja when she was 19. And many people in Australia, uh, many bhikkhunis in Australia were ordinated thereafter. But most important thing is that in Sri Lanka today there are 5,000 bhikkhunis. So these are the efforts of the pioneering bhikkhuni, including Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri, uh, who have given the space for bhikkhunis uh, to practice not just in Sri Lanka but globally, because Sri Lanka not just ordained bhikkhunis from Sri Lanka but from all over the world. Um, Dhamma, Aya Dhammananda, Bhikkhuni Dhammananda Mahatheri from Thailand also got ordinated in Sri Lanka. So there are pockets globally where bhikkhunis came up, and right now there are I don't know the exact number of bhikkhunis all over the world, but I know there are pockets all over the world where there are few bhikkhunis start continuing the tradition and taking it forward. Um, and that is why on this International Bhikkhuni Day, we wanted to remember the life and work of uh, Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri. And we want we feel inspired by her, and we would like to keep her in our hearts always. And that's the reason on the International Bhikkhuni Day we wanted to remember her, so that in India we can continue the tradition of bhikkhunis. Like bhikkhunis have come up in such large numbers in Sri Lanka, we wish and hope that in India too the bhikkhuni tradition will come up, and for that we are making efforts to start India's first Theravada Bhikkhuni monastery, and we would like to train many Samneris who can eventually become Bhikkhunis, and the Bhikkhuni tradition in India, which is the Buddha land, will proliferate again, and and we can make the world a different place, like Bhikkhuni Kusuma Mahatheri had dreamed, and make her dreams come true. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya.